All right, there you go. These All right. Good morning. Good afternoon, and good evening, Mom Cole. I apologize for this inconvenience for submitting this to it. So, this is the practical implications of the three research that I dissected previously, and I only would like to highlight several concepts and key ideas from these researches. So, based from the research problems, the gaps, the introductions, the conclusions, and the findings of those researches, I'll be probably highlighting several key concepts that I'd like to dwell on because I find it relevant and I'm able to connect to them. So, first is the research on the distributed L1, the Cantonese, and L2 language learning environments of dual language learners. So these are students who are Cantonese and who are learning English across home and school settings. So they're trying to compare home and school, so which is dominant there. And basically, the research tells us that that Cantonese, actually 100%, the Cantonese is dominant inside the house. Meanwhile, in school, there is a 50% usage of the Cantonese and English. So um, the statement of the problem we're trying to solve is what is the amount of L1 and L2 use across home and school contexts measured by indirect methods, questionnaires, and audio recordings. These are the direct method, which they recorded the conversations of these environments, home and school. So basically, it's just home and school, two things. So what is the implication of this to me now? It would dwell on the idea here. So I will directly assure you on the concept one. Language learning environments evolve dynamic communicative interactions between communicative partners like parent-child communication with structured and unstructured activities and classroom learning activities versus free play. So home and school are learning platforms of students actually. The home and school are learning platform for students. The problem is that inside the house, the Cantonese, inside their house, dominantly Cantonese is used and that English is kind of like not usually often the communication. Yet inside the school, there is a 50% usage of Cantonese and a 50% usage of English. So there is a problem with that. And what does it mean? So we get to understand here that learners they already know how to communicate themselves, but there are things that they cannot, and there is the need of the adults who will set the standard on their behalf. And so that is when zone of proximal development comes in because adults have to be there, adults have to exist to guide them. And so there's the existence of the adults. The adults should guide learners. So the implication of this would be set the standards to the learners, create meaningful experiences inside the classroom, expect the dominance of L1 in their homes, and teachers are in charge of regulating the language. Teachers should make meaningful and strategic ways in teaching the language itself. And so, for number one, set the standards to the learners. As teachers, as the learners gradually transition, as they grow, we set the standards on the students. So we tell them which is the right one, which is the good quality, and which is the perfect one. Not really the perfect one, but the correct one or the right one. And then create meaningful experiences inside the classroom, meaning to say, in order for students to grasp the entire content of language, it has to be meaningful to them. They have to be connected on the language that they are speaking in through. And then expect the dominance of L1 in their homes. This is very true. Inside their homes, probably the dominance of Cantonese is evident simply because nobody regulates them inside the house. Nobody punishes them, nobody corrects them, and so they have full freedom and liberty inside their home. Meanwhile, compared to school where they are regulated, teachers are there seeing them, and there is probably the need to the students to be regulated inside. So that is expected in them. And then teachers in charge of regulating the language, teachers should make meaningful and strategic ways in teaching the language. When I say meaningful and strategic, meaningful students should be able to connect. A strategic means that it has to be varied. We don't only go for one way we don't only dwell on a singular way or track of teaching the language, but it has to be it has to be different. There has to be options. There has to be many variations of this activity so that students have options and opportunities to exercise their skill. And definitely, that is manifested in many research. That is manifested in many researches that has been conducted already. Now, speaking of zone of proximal development, it's true that students they have an innate knowledge, and that is to be and as they grow and as they advance, as they are being exposed to the environment, there is a need for them to be guided by the adults and the teachers who are who will set the standards to them, who will tell them what is correct and what is right. Although this doesn't mean that we are trying to control how much amount of knowledge they have. It's simply not, it's not like that. But the adult's presence is to guide the students, to teach them which is the correct one, so that the students will not create their own system of language. The students will not create their own ideologies and own perspective, but it has to be based on the set standards that is delivered by the adults and the teachers who are in charge of educating the learner or facilitating their learning progress and development and growth. Further, I have here the concept too. Studies consistently show that early learners outperform late learners. So may mga ang early learners, they outperform late learners. However, they show that early learners may still fail to attain full mastery of the L2 phonology. Meaning to say, it doesn't mean that if you are early, you are very successful already. No, you may still fail on learning several key concepts because of other factors probably, and these factors depends on the environment, physical, internal, or external factors. So what does this tells me? What does it tell me now as a teacher? So the implication is critical years is sensitive, expose the learner to absorb significant amount of knowledge, teach them the right word, guided learning is relevant, and then essentialism comes in. We teach the basics to them. We teach what is relevant. So when we say teach the basics, these are simple to complex activities. Simple to complex activities mean to say that the activities should be appropriate to their age. But now, as they grow, as they transition from their age, the activities should also grow. It has to be simple, and then average, and then difficult, and then complex, so that it will challenge their competence that they possess in them. So learners should be challenged by the environment, and the environment should stimulate their competence all throughout the learning progress of the students. So that's how I understand this concept. For concept number three, interactionist theories proposing that new language forms build on social, motor, and cognitive foundations. So social, meaning to say that students have to be engaged in the communicative manner. So they should be engaged. They should be engaged socially, not only inside the room, but it begins from the room, and then a bigger picture. The scope of their exposure should not only dwell on school, but outside the world and outside their family. And then motor, speaking of tactile movement, so they have to move. They have to involve themselves in moving, creating, the involvement of their gestures and their hands and everything. And so that is when they move things, the learning comes in, because they get to explore things on their own by moving themselves. And cognitive foundations, meaning to say the absorption of knowledge. These are now the concepts and ideas that is planted in them, of which they receive that from their teacher. Now, what does it say? So what does this mean? Therefore, there is a unique combination of social, motor, and cognitive foundations. Learning a language doesn't only comes once. I mean, doesn't only one way, but there are many opportunities. There has to be a unique combination. So, learning a language is not one way deal, but it demands a unique combination of social process. Not only social process, but it has to be a unique combination of everything. It involves a lot of stakeholders of the community in order to give the learners options and opportunities to display their competence, and that is absolutely evident, naman. It has to be the unique combinations. And we also have here the ideology. There's another research that I dissected. I just want to include this. These three were compared. The Swedish immigrants with L1, they are aware of their first language, and they learned English language, the L2, versus Swedish citizens who were adapted. Now they have zero knowledge of their native language, but but they were able to have a full understanding of L2. And we have the genuine Swedish citizens who are there already. They are speakers. They are native speakers of the language. Now, the three of them scored equally the same in their competence. And the conclusion of the research tells us that the losing of L1 doesn't necessarily mean successfully acquiring L2. It's because yung genuine citizens actually they are higher and there is just a few differences between them. This still manifests that um, the losing of L1 doesn't mean you can successfully acquire L2. There are still differences between the three. So I think that ends my presentation. Thank you very much. This is just a short vlog, a short a short video. So thank you very much. I think that ends my presentation. I hope that the short video is sufficiently enough to, yeah. So thank you very much. That ends, I think, my presentation in this afternoon. Oh.